All right, everyone, now we have to talk about Ron DeSantis. I've got some reservations about what he has just done, not for the reasons the legacy media is targeting him, though. A couple of the counties that were hit hardest by Hurricane Ian have been granted by Ron DeSantis expanded early voting. The idea is, well, the polling place is currently going to be a tent because there's not much left. People have fled the area, but they're still registered to vote within their own area of Florida, so they have to go there, and so you need more time to do it. I'm sympathetic towards the basic premise of trying to make sure that people eligible to vote can actually do so. They lost their home, their vehicle got washed away because they stupidly tried to ford the river and they didn't realize how deep it was, etc., etc. Many such cases in hurricane season, by the way. Do not try to cross the water, even if it only looks an inch deep. It might be moving fast enough to nudge your vehicle off the road into a whirling abyss, and then you drown very painfully, and probably not the most pleasant way to die. So, if you're really that suicidal, there are other ways to do it other than drowning. In a slurry of mud, probably down there, get eaten by an alligator, by the way, after you die, and then they have to disembowel it or it poops up your bones at some point. That's the hope, is they don't have to kill the animal. Here's my reservation. The legacy media's problem with this is, well, those counties are overwhelmingly Republican. Yeah, well, the hurricane didn't choose where it made landfall. It didn't say, hey, let's go kill Republicans and then grant them the gift of expanded early voting, which, by the way, I keep hearing based on 2020, where there was no honking whatsoever, honk honk, that early voting, that the disproportionality there with Democrats choosing early voting or mail-in is totally coincidental. So I shouldn't worry about it, right? It's only going to affect the minority of Democrats and maybe some independents within these counties because the Republicans want to show up in person, right? That was the line after the 2020 election that we all were supposed to follow along with. Otherwise, we're engaging in election denial. So I don't understand what the legacy media problem is with this. They're talking about, well, there are neighboring counties that aren't as heavily Republican that also suffered damage. Yes, all of Florida suffered damage. You can't say that 2 homes got destroyed and so the entire voting precinct needs expanded early ballot access. That's not reasonable. It's in several areas where there was massive devastation, where a significant proportion of homes and businesses are destroyed or took heavy enough damage that the rehabbing of these businesses, these apartments and shit, is going to continue long after midterms. That part actually makes sense. Again, the hurricane didn't choose where it made landfall. God did it, or something like that. It's an act of God. That's not the problem. My problem is that using the existence of an emergency to, at the 11th hour, you're less than a month till midterms, change voting patterns in any way, regardless of who it benefits, who it detriments, what form it takes. Have we not just gone through this and decided, generally speaking, that it's a bad idea that's linked to difficulties within the election period? Like actually counting every ballot, making sure that everything is transparent and above board. Did we not just go through this with the lockdownerism of COVID not that long ago? So why is Ron DeSantis tampering with the voting system, only for a couple of counties, by the way, not for the whole state, and it is an arbitrary judgment how much damage the county has to have before you have this occur. Why is he making that decision? And why was it not made immediately after the hurricane hit rather than waiting until a few weeks out from the midterm elections? I don't like it. I don't claim that DeSantis is doing this for political reasons. That's the legacy media's canard. He's just trying to help these Republican areas vote more. He's 5 to 10 points ahead. He does not care about the turnout levels. He is beyond the scope of Crist to win. He knows this. It's why he refuses to debate Crist. At least he has a reason. He and Warnock and a few others who held out, they're incumbents. That doesn't help Katie Hobbs down in Arizona. Or Fetterman up in Pennsylvania, who wanted it to be when early voting had already culminated. So early voting access, I think that should be more constrained anyway. In my opinion, voting, unless there is some absolutely transcendent need, and lingering damage from a hurricane where there are still usable structures in the area is not transcendent emergency. It should be limited to in-person, show your ID, get your ballot, and vote same day. And by the way, the left is correct. Election Day should be a federal holiday, just to be clear. I do agree with that. It's the one election reform proposal that they have that I can get aboard with. I would just pair it with universal voter ID. It doesn't matter what kind of ID, but show that you are who you are. Everyone has a state ID or a driver's license or something like that, unless they're outright completely flat out. And there aren't many bums that show up to vote unless the Democrats are offering them packs of Marlboros to do so. I don't believe in expanding early voting access because of storm damage. By God, if you have that, so New England can do that because there was a lot of snow. The roads are impassable to some of the out-of-season non-natives that have second homes in the state, but they want to vote in the state because they stay here most of the year and they go skiing and shit, then they go on vacation back to their homeland of Florida, or California usually. They can expand it. California says, we're expanding universal mail-in voting and early access because there was an earthquake. Yeah, there's an earthquake literally every day in California, but this one was a little bit higher on the Richter scale, and there were some cracks in the pavement and stuff, and people got all jilted and jolty, and we're just going to expand it, so, whatever. Also, didn't we just go through a period in which numerous state Supreme Courts shot down things like this because the state didn't, because the entity that enabled it didn't have the power to do so? In some states, it was, hey, the Constitution countermands this. And the state legislature acted unconstitutionally, under the Constitution of the state, that is. Governors did this. Desantis is trying to do this in the executive capacity. What gives him the specific authority to even do this? We had this argument already. We've been having this fucking argument now for almost 2 years, and Desantis should probably know better. That's why he waited. He waited until right before the election so that it couldn't get injuncted in a court because the court system moves too slowly. The courts that would have direct, control over the situation, unless you want to escalate it to the state Supreme Court or something, probably the courthouses aren't in session right now because they got damaged by the hurricane. How convenient. I don't think it's shenanigans. I just think that it's poor planning, and I think that we need to put this genie back in the bottle, have one election system that generally covers everything. Yeah, the states can control it. They should be compelled to come along with the basic premise of fair voting. Make Election Day a federal holiday. Nobody needs to be going to work. Make it a national holiday. Universal voter ID. It's already been expanded into several new states. It's the norm in most states already, so it's not a huge issue for the most part, except in a few blighted far blue areas. But we shouldn't be tampering with the early voting system. If you're going to have early voting, again, it should be reasonable in its accommodation. It shouldn't be changed for one county over another. It's anything like in the 2020 election due to COVID and lockdownerism. In some states, it wasn't a problem. In other states, it was. Arguably, people's equal rights were violated in some states because of the regulations by which if you're showing up at the polls, you must maintain a 3-yard distance. Wear your mask at all times. And you better have gotten the coof jab, otherwise we won't give you your ballot. That didn't actually happen, but, it was suggested. It was proposed by numerous politicians. Elected officials, not just some rando on Twitter, just to be clear. That's about all. Peace out.